best efforts of British Telecom. I'm back. I thought we'd have a conversation, a little chat about the stadium. I am stunned. I'm not surprised, but I'm stunned. I'm stunned by the reaction of the fans. There really should be. I mean, I don't want to. We live in troublesome times, especially with social media and what you put online, and this could be misconstrued as incitement to hate speech. But so I'm not going to call for some sort of insurrection here. But I can't believe that the client reference numbers. I can't believe that the cow has been milked so aggressively. There's blood streaming from the teats. The beasts are lying all over the milking shed floor. And still the RSPCA haven't come. Still the animal lovers, the animal rights campaigners have made no noise, no posters, no nothing. It's really strange. But I guess what we're up against, and we are up against it, those of us who are sentient beings, for want of a less grand phrase, is we're up against the Levyologists. And it is a cult, and it's a cult which is built upon fraud and deceit, and it's like in an Indiana Jones movie there was a scene with they're in this sort of temple thing, and all these guys in masks and sort of religious garb, and there's and they have cages, and they're like blood sacrifice. And the Levyologists are like the stooges in these amphitheatres, and they get together and they every full moon or whenever it is, they're sacrificing the virgin from the village or whatever it is. And yet still, because the whole thing's hokum, when there's lightning and thunder, that isn't an angry god, it's just meteorological conditions. But so despite their sacrifices, still the crops fail. Still the beasts in the field wither, because chopping some poor girl up has no influence. And no matter how much money and how much rhetoric we get of Levy running a tight ship, and oh goodness me, could you imagine if we were owned by one of those awful sort of Bond villains that owns Manchester City or United or Chelsea? And this is how Levy exists. This is him operating in this extraordinary bubble of isolation from reality. Because in any other sector, believe me, he would have been down the road, handed his sandwiches in a roadmap. Goodbye, you don't work here anymore. He has operated, shrouded in this mystique of being a safe pair of hands. Because we haven't gone to the wall. When was the last time Tottenham Hotspur Football Club received a winding up order in the post? There's only a handful of clubs that anybody can name that have ever been driven to such appalling circumstances. It's not a common thing. And now, where there's more and more money in the game than ever before, you'd really have to try hard in order to get yourself in that area of jeopardy. And the Levyologists are great because it's like they haven't noticed that everybody else has noticed that their spiel, their shtick, it doesn't make any sense. Because before the debt, and we'll come on to that, before the horrific debt for the stadium and the club generally, which is now in excess of Manchester United's, which before that, the line was that we don't have any debt. That was the metric. That was the yardstick by which we proved that Daniel Levy was a cut above the others. Because he wasn't a lunatic. He didn't risk us. He wasn't the threat. It was interesting. I met up with an old friend of mine recently, and we're both officially middle-aged, and we're griping about the world. And one of his bugbears, one of the stones in his shoe, was the fact that people would say, so what you're saying is, as if that was a mechanism for them to avoid having to actually listen to what you'd said. And so I shared with him this business with Levy and the idea that you criticise Levy, therefore I suppose you'd like a return to the dark old days of, insert demonic monster that was directing the club. Well, for one, I didn't say that. I'll never say it. For two. And for three, until somebody builds a time machine, it's not possible. So the situation with the stadium where we are, the fact that it's so horrifically running over course, let's have a look at that. Let's discuss that. Let's look at, try and frame that to give it some perspective. So the first argument in defence of this by the Levyologists is that, well, all big projects overrun. And, you have to accept that to be true. But it's not as a statement, as a snapshot. It's not a panacea to this, because projects overrun, but projects tend to have a contingency budget, and they have a contingency within the time schedule where they make allowances. They plan so when there is unexpected change, it doesn't come like completely out of the blue. I asked the other day on the blog if Levy, if ENIC had a contingency fund, financially speaking, for the stadium. But it occurred to me as I was asking the question, it's kind of irrelevant, even if they didn't, or if they did, because no project goes over by hundreds of millions of pounds. No project. Only if it was started by a complete moron. And you can't blame Brexit, you can't blame this, that or the other. This is down to bad planning. And this is one of the reasons that Mace and their subcontractors refused to sign anything that indemnified Levy against it overrunning or stuff having to be redone. And one of the most cringeworthy strands of the cognitive dissonance which is being employed here is that we have the Levyologists saying, as they then become very philosophical about things. What will be, will be. When it's built, it's going to be the best stadium in Europe. So, well, that's very generous. But it completely overlooks the Marx Brothers, the absolute chaos that has gone on. And more to the point, it kind of removes them from having to examine the thing further down the line, and it's called repercussions. So the repercussions of this aren't that we're camped at Wembley and it isn't very nice, and we're, if we could do something different that would be great, because everybody's had enough. That isn't a repercussion. That's just a bump in the road. The true repercussion here is that the entire fairy tale, the myth, the lie, the distraction, the deceit, because it is deceit, trust me, is that once we have this new palatial, world-class, 6-star shopping mall, whatever the hell it's going to be, that we'll be able to compete with the big boys. Okay, let's just pause that, because I can't even be bothered to, if I have to explain to you that gate money has become increasingly less relevant as the decades have strolled past, and we're now through the looking glass, and in our lifetime, your lifetime, there will be the Netflix Premier League, there'll be the Facebook Cup, and then when those guys have run out of money, there'll be something else. So there's never going to be a shortage of money, and the money's only going to get more and more and more, and it's the broadcasting rights. And despite what they tell you, it's about selling shirts, and it's about getting subscriptions up to the broadcasting rights and so forth. So we're going to compete with the big boys. But we're only going to be able to do that once we clear the debt. And when the debt was first announced, and I'm not going to get distracted, I want to go down a rabbit hole of saying, well, that was for the hotel, and that was for the food court, and that was for the debt en masse was, say, 500 million, and it's now 650 million, 637 and change, whatever it is. Not only has the point in time where we're good to go out and, you know, drop 40, 50 grand on a player without even blinking, not only has that point drifted off into the hinterland, but we're actually adding to the bill right now. Playing at Wembley for a season wasn't a moneymaker, and it's only got even more financially dubious the longer we stay there. Next up, we look at the squad. And I've been through all this with you. We've had the penury myth, the academy myth, there's so much. Oh, it is mythology, because these are intangible things. These are things that don't exist. They're dragons, angels, you know, just nonsense. And the academy myth, that's been well and truly busted now. Who's come through from the academy? Oh, Harry Kane. Despite Tottenham, despite no continuity of training personnel, scouting personnel, thrown to pillar to post to all these clubs, and it was just sheer bloody mindedness that won through. And we see that now. There'll be an international break, and he'll be running his heart out for England, even though really he should be sat at home playing on one of those Space Invader things. Nobody else has come through the academy. The academy has been like a borstal. I mean, you know, you come out with more contacts in the underworld than you went in with. Josh Onoma, not good enough. Sorry, guy, just not good enough. Who's the other one? Marcus Edwards. Jesus, I mean, just deranged. I mean, maybe he's doing something in Holland or wherever the hell he is, Netherlands, but he not good enough. None of these guys have been good enough, and the academy fundamentally hasn't worked because it was run from the mindset, because all businesses trickle down the hierarchy. You have the weak-minded guy at the top, and that trickles down through the business. And his idea was to produce players for buttons and sell them for billions. Doesn't work. And the way you do it, the model that is successful, they have at Stamford Bridge, which is a horrible thing to say, but it works. And if you think I'm picking on Levy, oh, but you know, we've made lots of money selling these players to, you know, Jake Livermore. You make no money out of selling muck to fifth-rate clubs. I hate to break it to you, it's a total and utter waste of time. You'd make more money moving money around, trading money. You make more money with Bitcoin or something like that. And if you look at Liverpool and Everton, I've put those charts up on the blog. They have had an abysmal record with their academies, because clubs you cannot simply put seeds in a window box, water them, bit of sunshine, and outgrow 20, 30 million pound players, which is precisely what Levy threatened when he did that NASDAQ thing. So where am I going with all this? You know, is it just, do I get off on the angst? Well, where I'm going with this is that I'm a football fan, I'm a Tottenham fan. I'm not a fan of an investment company. They mean nothing to me. And if anything, they've got to be really, really, really on their game not to annoy me, because they're in it to make money out of something I fell in love with as a kid. I don't think that's unreasonable. I've got an emotional investment. I expect a certain standard level of behaviour. And they're failing. Their plan we're going to sell more seats and more expensive artisan this and handcrafted that. It doesn't stack up. It simply doesn't stack up. No other football club in the history of football has ever used this business model. Is it because they didn't think of it? Because they realised the fundamental truth that you do not become more, you know, if you stand in a church, you do not become a spiritual person. If you go and put your football team into a sensational facility, it doesn't become a world beater. So my gripe is bigger than a gripe, because being gifted with not being a dummy, I can see that by the time this debt is cleared, and the debt hasn't finished running yet, That was the other thing. People were saying, "Oh yeah, but it's just a facility." Listen, we've all had the letter come through the post from your credit card, your Visa people, saying to you, "Hi, you've been paying your bill, with a modicum of reliability for the last 3 years or whatever. We're going to stick another $4,000 on your account." If you accept it, you've taken the debt on. You don't owe it till you've spent it. I understand that. I'm not stupid. But if you accept it, you're planning to use it. It goes beyond rainy day money. And Levy's had to borrow more because he's screwed up. It's as simple as that. Whatever contingency he had, gone. Finito. So I can see a scenario where the debt spirals and spirals. Bear in mind, we've already mortgaged the shirt deal. Now, I have no idea how awful the devaluation is going to be of that deal with Nike. It's not going to be good. And if you're telling me they've got an agreement in the drawer, what's this, a Luka Modric gentleman's agreement with Nike, that it'll be upwardly reviewed every season or 2 or 3 seasons. Not a chance. So what we're going to have is he's hocked and mortgaged a lot of the revenue streams that we have and will have for many years to come. Plus, so that's one end of the candle lit, and then the other end of the candle is the debt we owe, which is still being topped up gently, even though it's being serviced, I'm sure, by the running costs of being at Wembley and the associated, drop off of business, because people don't go out and buy as much stuff, tickets, shirts, popcorn, when it's a temporary gig. So there'll be a depreciation there. So we're left with candles burning at both ends, and then it's like there's another wick or another fuse out of this stick of dynamite, whereby the team is getting older. Sissoko, who some of you are championing, is the only word I can describe it as. He's 29. Moussa Dembele, look, he was kaput 2 seasons ago, but he's 31. Toby Alderweireld, what has he got to do to get a contract? Been our standout player all season, along with Vertonghen, but neither of those are spring chickens, and they need that sort of golden handcuff contract deal, which hasn't been forthcoming, which is particularly peculiar. So there are bright spots. There's Sanchez, there's Dele, there's this, that and the other. There's a few players there going to be around for a while, but they're not going to live forever. Harry Kane's 25. 24, 25. But, my point is that is the debt really going to be cleared? By the time the debt's cleared, will Harry Kane be 30? There's building and there's building, there's treading water to stand still. And that's what we're doing right now. And the last comment I'll make, and this is in no particular order, just as I've thought of it, these unscripted, are the season ticket holders. And I made the reference when I opened this chat here about the devastation, this apocalypse in the milking shed. This dystopian mess with the cows bled dry and desiccated. Have every last drop squeezed out of them. And if you want your money back for games that you bought tickets for the new stadium, which doesn't exist because the doors aren't open, you have to apply for a refund for every single game, and then they give you 1/19 of the thing you bought back. And after years of adult life in the UK, you become, jaundiced to things. You accept things that aren't really fair because it's just kind of the way of the world. And so when you buy a railway ticket, you look at the small print, and it doesn't actually say they have to honour getting you from A to B. But a football club where, if Spurs lost every week, we'd still watch them. I might not be happy, but we still watch them because there's that emotional investment that I mentioned before. So the idea that you treat people who are in deep with the club the same way you would for people who are just passing punters who need to get a train to go to work or whatever is appalling. Now I know that they've had to refund some corporates, but that's because they got corporate legal departments, and if those guys start saying there's the threat of action, but there's also the threat of a particularly bad smell getting out about Spurs, and about Spurs being a company you don't want to do business with, a company you don't want to, spend your jolly money with. So that needs to be resolved as well. But that's it. International break is upon us. Sorry for the absence of the videos, and my deepest apologies to those that thought the videos were over. Good luck. Keep it on.